Bulavinaka. My name is Tui Mogaribaravi, and I will share with you a talanoa about growing up in the islands. And I will go back 30 years to a little boy exploring the land. The young lad would comb the hillsides and leave his footprints in the sand from sunrise to sunset. But he was not alone. The boy did not have a mobile phone, the latest gadgets, nor TV. But he had something more, a shadow to walk on, a shadow to be inquisitive with, and a shadow that protected him. The shadow was always there for him. When the shadow laughed, the little lad would also giggle. When the shadow took a nap under a banyan tree, the lad would cuddle up too. The boy had a shadow to walk on, and that was the world to him. He would ask the shadow, "Why is the sky blue? Why do the birds always sing? And why do the reeds whisper? Why are the palms always swaying?" And even then, there were other questions. Why are the tides so angry? And why is Moana sinking our little island? And the shadow would look wide and deep to find peaceful answers for such an innocent mind. Now, the young lad is grown and lives here in Sydney. He is a father himself, but life is different. Before daybreak, he rises to kiss his sleeping son before traveling to his job site. At his lunch break, he stares down at his solitary shadow. He unwraps his sandwich, and all he hears is silence. When he takes a sip of his drink, there is no little voice to nag him for some juice. It is lonely. From sunrise to sunset, there's nothing. Nothing. In the evening, he races home, hoping for time with his son, to hear his laughter, wipe his tears, and share some talanoa. He listens intently for footsteps to meet him at the front door, but there are none. As he left in the morning, now again in the evening, the child peacefully sleeps. The man stands in his house and grieves his uncast shadow. You see, Minister, with rental hikes and rising energy prices, the man had to move further west where rent is cheaper. This means longer journey times. Rising prices forces him to work extra hours so his family can stay afloat yet again. The cost of living has made him poor with time. No time for family, no time for community and recreation, and most important, no time to cast a shadow over his son. I'll have to skip. The shadow of climate change is not the nurturing shadow of our parents and ancestors. Its darkness threatens our way of life in the Pacific and here in Western Sydney. Our use of fossil fuels, our greed for easy profits is putting at risk what is most valuable, our time with family, our community and culture, the health of land and ocean. We Pacifica people know we must live sustainably. Our ancestral stories teaches us this, but this is difficult for communities, especially when our shadows are missing from us.
Our leaders, my name is Api Tuaru. I am a mother of 7 children, a grandmother of 21, and a great-grandmother of 4. I'm originally from Rarotonga, born in Rarotonga, in Cook Islands. I've been in Australia since 1989, and I became a citizen of Australia in 1993. All my life, I've worked in Australia to support my children because my husband is not really my children is my inspiration. It gives me the strength to work very hard. Back then, as they were small, I had to juggle from afternoon shift so my children can have mummy time before they go to school. So the difference between then and now, I was working, I could budget rental, electricity, and food. Cost of living wasn't very bad back then. I worked until my husband had a double stroke about 13 years ago. We had to share care in the home. My son, my daughter, and myself, while I was still working. My son took up full-time work, so he couldn't help. My daughter was struck with stress, so I had to resign from work, stay home and take care. The big difference between working as a mother, getting money, and going on central payment is two different things. And this is my story. Because going from $800 a week to $400 a week is a big difference. So the energy prices are going up, cost of living is going up, and caring for a disabled husband is even worse. So I had to work my way through, budget very wisely so we could survive. So all I ask is, because living in a housing commission, we don't have energy efficient air cons to work all the time, and the heat now. So all I ask is, please help those in our Pacific communities who are struggling just to survive. Thank you.
My name is Apinis Marau, and I come from the island of Ngau with maternal links to Vaturele within the Fiji Islands. My island, like many others, are experiencing the effects of rising sea levels. Villages like mine have to move further to the mainland. I came to Australia for better opportunities and to help support my family back at home. But even this may not be enough to protect them. Cyclones and floods are also becoming worse every year. It's the new abnormal, and it seems like no one is safe anymore. I arrived in Australia last year on a temporary work visa, and my first job was in the meat factories up in Lismore. I was in the country for just a week with 44 other friends of mine when we heard on the news that there was going to be a possible flood. That's when we decided to post it up on Facebook that we would be around to help out if anyone within the community needed a hand. At first we thought that it was going to be just another day of fun, playing in the rain, helping out, like having another day off. Because back in Fiji, we experienced floods and cyclones almost every year. So it was something normal for us, it was something that we would always do. And because back in the islands, everybody depends on each other, and especially during cyclones, we would always depend on each other to rebuild together. When we were called to help at the aged care facility, it became serious. It was really emotional. Most of the residents were bedridden. Many had given up hope of getting out alive. For a long time after the flood, everyone was still in shock. It took a long time for people to even start rebuilding their lives. We came from Fiji not expecting this to happen in a big, rich country like Australia. But it turns out no matter where we go, the same things are happening. Disasters like this are everywhere. After my time in Lismore, a job in Western Sydney actually brought me here. With the amount of money I make, it's hard to keep up with the cost of living. Before leaving Fiji, we were told that we would be making more money here in Australia. But what we didn't realize was that the cost of living here is way higher than back in Fiji. I came here for a better life, but I'm worried about how I can survive and keep sending money to help my family back at home. I'm worried about what it will be like during summer and how much higher energy bills are going to get. After what happened in Lismore, news channels kept calling me for interviews, and they would ask me, why did you decide to help? That question never made sense to me. It was something we do every year back in Fiji because it's just the right thing to do. And because we always depend on each other. Minister, I want to ask, will your government do the right thing? Will you help communities like mine access cheap, clean energy to lower our bills and get through summer? Are you going to do what it takes to stop making climate change worse? Number one.
Is being impacted by climate change and cost of living. Thank you. I think we all do. Please be seated. And to the stories, experiences and concerns you have just heard. These are asks that we have shared with you and your offers prior to today. I invite you to please come up to the microphone. Being with us on our climate and cost of living concerns, Western Sydney and in the Pacific. Climate change affects everyone, but not everyone is equal. Pacifica people, First Nations peoples and communities in Western Sydney will be hit earlier and harder. These communities have less resources to adapt well. We believe that climate justice and fairness are crucial elements of the for you in three main areas. Firstly, the responsibility in the Pacific. Secondly, help with climate adaptation. And third, the fair share of new training and job opportunities. We invite you to respond to each request. We ask you to please keep your responses brief, around 1 minute or less. And we will have our timekeeper, who is really hard one, notifying us when we need to move on. So can we have a roll? Can you do a bell? Yeah, there you go. So we call on you as Minister. Use of fossil fuels threatens the existence of our island homes and way of life. Drastically reducing emissions is the single most important action to...
Well, absolutely. We will be announcing our 2035 target. It will be a good and strong target. To fossil fuels, I just want to say this. We have a big task to replace them. They have to be replaced. We still need the energy. So we have to work very hard. We have to work very hard domestically. I talked about 82% renewables. It's not easy. It's not easy to do, but we're doing it. And internationally, we have to help our friends and partners make the transition as well. You know, tomorrow I'm working as well. I'm working in Melbourne. You know who I'm meeting with tomorrow? The Japanese Minister for Energy. To talk to him about how we can help them transition to renewable energy. Australian gas keeps Tokyo's lights on. We're not going to turn those lights off. But we want to talk to them about working towards more renewables for them, from us, green hydrogen and other renewables. So, yes.
We recognise some of the following issues extend beyond your portfolio. We ask you raise the question of the following concern.
In relation to adaptation in Australia, yes, we are developing a national adaptation plan. Because we have to acknowledge, mitigation is the most important thing, reducing emissions, but we've left it too late as the world. So our country is changing, our region is changing, so our national adaptation plan will make a big contribution to that. Australia's contribution to the Loss and Damage Fund for the Pacific. As I said yesterday, we announced we would rejoin the Green Climate Fund, which is very important, but it's not enough, and the Prime Minister will say more in the Pacific in a few weeks' time at the Pacific Islands Forum. And yes, we are talking to various friends in the Pacific governments about the long-term future of our region.
Our people in Western Sydney face some of the worst impacts of climate change, as we have heard. But we lack resources to adapt to these new extremes. We congratulate the federal government on commitments to develop an energy-saving program, to reinvest in Clean Energy Finance Corporation, and to roll out community batteries and solar banks in our local communities, as we have heard you tell us. Will you ensure, Minister, that substantial portion of benefits from the energy saving program will go to low income and renting households, including in Western and Southwestern Sydney?
So more than that, it's not just a fair share for low income households, it's designed to help low income households. The entire thing. As I said, we spent $1.7 billion in the budget. Some of it goes to small business, who we need to reduce their emissions as well. But we have money direct for social housing, public housing, community housing. Minister Sharp and I are currently negotiating an increase in funding for New South Wales. I've already announced the increase in funding for Victoria, and every state will increase funding. We're also got other programs. Solar banks, as you mentioned, is directly for people in apartments, because apartments are very hard to get solar panels on the roof. They need help. It's all about that. So more than just fair share, it's all focused on exactly those people.
Okay, thank you, Minister.
And some of our community batteries are already going to Western and Southwestern Sydney. We're committed to one in Mount Druitt, we're committed to one in FAAMATA, and we have many, many more to commit to, yes, and they'll be fairly spread across the country.
Hub to help residents in Western and Southwestern Sydney understand what support is available with cost of living and climate adaptation.
Yeah. I'm very interested in that, and I do want to consult with you about that and explore that option with you. That's your idea. It's a good idea. I read it yesterday, and I thought, yes, there's something there. We should keep talking about that. Yes.
Announcement of new job and training opportunities through the new energy apprenticeship programs and the new energy skills program. We are keen to hear how young people in our communities will benefit from these programs. So, Minister, will you work with us to ensure that a fair portion of these and other training and economic opportunities go to communities in Western and Southwestern Sydney?
Yes, of course we will. I do want to say this, to be very honest with you though. I mean, the biggest economic transformation will come in Australia's regions. In places like the Hunter Valley, in Newcastle and Gippsland. That's where the coal-fired power stations are, and they'll close. And we need to create new jobs there. We need to be fair to all Australians. And we're not going to see anybody miss out. And the good news is those regions which have powered Australia for so long, and we owe them a debt of thanks. You know, people who work in coal-fired power stations and coal mines are not bad people, they're good people. They've done good work for Australia. The world is changing now, and we need new energy. And I want to create jobs for them and their children. So you don't have to leave Newcastle or anywhere else if that's where you want to live. That we're creating new jobs for you as well. So yes, it's about Western Sydney. I live in Western Sydney. I grew up in Western Sydney. I still live in Western Sydney, and it's very important to me. But I'm also going to be honest with you and say we need to make sure everybody gets a fair share. Not just Western Sydney, everyone.
And finally, we realise that there is a lot more to discuss, and we look forward to more conversations with you. Will you commit to meeting with us again in the new year?
How could I not?
Thank you, Malopito, Minister Bowen. Please take a seat. And over to you.
Thank you so much for the responses that you have just made. And if I can just go through it, because it's important not to us, to all of us.
Our event today. Please stand and look towards the group.